Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to the session on quick measures in Power BI. I hope I'm audible and the screen visible clearly to all of you. My name is Bhargavi and I'll be taking you through this small quick webinar on how we can make use of quick measures in Power BI. Now, before we get there and start off with quick measures, we need to have an idea about what is a measure. It is nothing but a metric kind of a thing. Okay, like a metric, you create something. So in Power BI, let me open up the tool. We use something called as DAX. Okay, now DAX is the formula language of Power BI. Data Analysis Expressions is what it stands for, and it is the formula language of Power BI. Using DAX, we can create new tables in Power BI. We can create columns. We can create calculated columns. We can create calculated measures. We can also create calculated tables. Okay, so all this is done using DAX, which stands for Data Analysis Expressions. Data Analysis Expressions. It is called as the formula language of Power BI. Okay, having said this, what is the difference between a calculated measure and a calculated column? Okay, when do we go for a measure and when do we go for a column? So, for example, now in this particular data source, I have some data, transactional data, and we can see how much profit is made from each transaction. Okay, now I would simply like to, depending on the profit value there, let's say I just want to mark the value as either loss or profit. Okay, depending on the value for each and every transaction, I want to segregate each transaction into either, call it either profit if it is a positive value and call it a loss if it is a negative value. How can we do this? So we can achieve it by writing a simple if statement in Excel. My logical test is to check the value present here. If it is greater than 0, then I will say it is a profit. Otherwise, I will say that it is a loss. Simple expression. And when I copy the formula down, you will notice that every record, so here it is checking this value. Here it is checking this value. Here it is checking this value. Okay. So every place it is checking the corresponding profit value. And if it is a positive number, it is calling it profit. Otherwise, it is calling it a loss. This is called a calculated column. This is called a calculated column. So what is a calculated column now? If I have to define it based on this example, it is a new column that will be created inside your table. There are multiple columns in the table and this becomes another column inside the table and it works with row level data. From each and every record, whatever data is present in each and every record, it is taken and an output is generated for that. So it works with row level data. Calculated column works with row level data. Row level data. Okay, it works with row level data. And you can see that it has produced an output for everything. So it produces as many outputs as there are inputs. In each and every row where I have the input, I have an output that got generated. It produces as many outputs as there are inputs. So in whichever method you're able to comprehend, in whichever method you're able to understand this statement or the concept, you use that method. When I say it is a row level calculation, is it clear? Then that is what a column is. It is something that works with row level data. It becomes a part of your table, or it is something that produces as many outputs as there are inputs. in whatever way you want, you can define it. Whatever is helping you understand the concept better is fine. Now, what is a calculated measure? Because ultimately we will be talking about quick measures. So when I say quick measure, okay, when I say quick measure, we can only create measures. Quick measure is an option for creating measures, not columns. You cannot create a calculated column using the quick measures feature. You can only create a measure. You can only create a measure. So what is a calculated column? We understood. So what is a calculated measure? It is something that works with aggregations, aggregated data. What is an aggregation now? I'm saying it works with aggregated data or it's an aggregation that is applied. What is an aggregation? A way of summarizing the data. Summarization means anything like sum, average, minimum, maximum, count, variance, standard deviation. So all these are a way of aggregating or summarizing the data. These are called summarizations or aggregations. So when you say you want to create a new measure, it will involve some sort of an aggregation or the other. It will involve some sort of a summarization or the other. Now here in the column, did I use sum or average or min or max or anything like that? No. I'm just checking the profit value as is, comparing it with zero, seeing whether it is greater than zero or not, accordingly marking it as a profit or a loss. But when I say a calculated measure, which works with aggregations or aggregated data, and what are the aggregations? All these are a few examples of how you can aggregate your data. For example, I would like to know what is the total profit made by the business. Total profit made by this business. So that would be equal to summation of, right? Total means summation of the data present in the profit column, which is so and so number. How many outputs did I get? First of all, I'm using an aggregation here, summing up. So the moment there is an aggregation, we know that we have to create a measure. And how many outputs did it generate? Only one output. So the number of outputs that gets generated when you create a measure is less than the number of inputs. I have taken nearly 10,000 records of data here and summed it, giving you one single output, which is the total profit, summation of profit, overall profit. So this is called a measure. Anybody working in Power BI with DAX, in Power BI, you know, DAX is an integral part of it. You need to create a lot of fields using DAX. Could be columns, could be measures, could be tables. Now we have first established the difference between a calculated column and a calculated measure. So same thing. It doesn't matter where you're doing it. This is the concept. Okay. Now let me take you to Power BI. I'll give you a demonstration of a calculated measure. I'm going to connect to an Excel file and then we will proceed from there. This is a retail business data of a retail business, and we have data for 4 years over here. It's a retail business where different types of orders are placed. Many products are sold. We have data starting from 2021 all the way up to 2024, December 2024. Okay. Data is getting loaded into Power BI Desktop. Here is the data from that particular connection. Now, second point that we should understand before we proceed further. We understood what is the difference between a calculated column and calculated measure. How do you take a decision on whether you want to create a column or a measure for a given requirement? If your requirement involves any sort of summarization, producing lesser number of outputs compared to inputs, You go with a measure. Okay. Now there is something called as an implicit measure and there is something called as an explicit measure. What does this mean? For example, okay, let us say I will create a card visual. Here in the visualizations pane, we can see different types of visuals that can be created in Power BI. I'm going to create this one, which is called a card. And into this card visual, let's say I simply want to into this card visual, I would simply want to bring the sales value, the sales. So I'll simply select sales here or drag and drop it over here. Now look at this. It is not showing me each and every value present in the sales column. It is showing us the sum of sales. Look at this, sum of sales. So this is an implicit calculation. Whenever you use any metric value, which is indicated with this sigma sign, all the numericals, okay, whenever you use this, it is always summarized by default. And here it is showing me what is the summation of sales. Now, if you want, you can even change it to something else. By default, it is sum, but when we click on this icon, we can change it to average, minimum, maximum. These are all different ways in which you can summarize your data. Median, distinct count, all these things. So this is an implicit calculation. This is local to only this particular visual on this page. Okay, I cannot use it elsewhere. I cannot use it in other calculations also. This is implicit. Sales is always presented with summarization, or it could be profit or discount or anything. That is a numerical here. What is an explicit calculation? How can I create it? If I want the total sales by explicitly writing a formula, then how to do it? So up here in the calculations group, we have the option to create a new measure, or I could right click on the table and say, I want to create a new measure or even a quick measure for that matter. I'll just go ahead and say, I want to create a new measure. Okay, so I'm not saying quick measure, just a new measure. Now this formula bar opens up and the formula bar, we can give the name to the field. Total sales is equal to summation of the data present in the sales column of the orders table. Summation of data present in the sales column of the orders table. This is an explicit calculation. Even if I go to another page, like all the other fields are available, my explicit calculation total sales is also available. It comes with a calculator kind of an icon against it, which means this is a measure that we created. It is not a part of your data source. This is something that you created for your analysis. For your analysis, you explicitly created a measure which computed the total sales, and that value is stored in this field. It is kept in this field. Now, how can I see the value in that field? I'll create another card and simply put this value there. See, it is the same as the implicit calculation. Nothing different. This is an implicit calculation. This here explicitly I am saying I computed total sales and I brought the total sales over here. So I hope the difference between an implicit calculation and an explicit calculation that you write and create is clear. Now we can proceed further. So when we say we want to create a measure, there is also an option for quick measure. You can do it, select it from here, or up here also we have the option for quick measure. We can select it from here. It opens up the quick measures pane. Okay. Again, to use this efficiently, you need to be familiar with DAX. You cannot say because there is a quick measure option, I will use it and therefore I need not learn DAX. That is not the case. Only when you're well versed with DAX expressions, when you are thorough with DAX expressions, you can make efficient use of quick measure. This is just like a friend that will make your life easy. You don't have to write a formula from the scratch. You can use quick measure feature to create a formula for creating a measure. Only measure, not a column. Okay, measure. So there are different categories available under quick measures, something called as aggregate per category. Then we have filters, time intelligence functions. You can get totals, and you can also apply mathematical operations and some text operations using quick measures. Okay, so let's say my requirement is to compute the profit ratio. Okay, I will minimize this. I have to calculate something called as, so I have to calculate something called as the profit ratio. Profit ratio. Now, profit ratio is calculated as the total profit divided by the total sales. Total profit divided by the total sales. Now, I'll have to create a measure for this. I'm saying total profit, overall profit divided by the total sales. That is the overall sales. Okay. So it's not a column. First of all, you need to know for a given requirement whether you should create a column or a measure. I need to create a measure. So I can either go and write my formula by creating a measure, or I could use quick measures and create it from here. I will do it explicitly first. From new measure option, I would like to get the profit ratio. As I told you, it is calculated as the summation, that is total profit divided by the total sales. Okay, I could do this total profit value, sum of profit divided by the sum of sales. That will give me profit ratio. And let me show it to you in a card. It is coming in decimal format, so I will just change its format to a percentage. It is 12.56. Instead of having to manually create this formula, can I use my quick measures option to do the same? Yes, we can do it. Instead of writing the formula from this, using the formula bar, we can create it using quick measure. So let's see how this is going to help us now. Select a calculation first. So what is our formula? It is a simple mathematical operation where I need to perform division. I need to divide the total profit by the total sales. So I will choose division. Division. Now look at that. What should be the numerator and what should be the denominator? Numerator is profit. I'll bring it here. See, it is summarized, sum of profit. Denominator is sales, summation of sales. Now here you can go, and if you want, you can change the summarization. Depending on your requirement, you can change the summarization. You could even change the field by deleting and putting something else. Okay. What I did here is correct. I would like to take the profit and divide it by the sales. Now, the moment I click on the add button, you can see how it has created a formula. This is the formula Power BI has created for us. This is the formula Power BI has created. And where is this field? You can see it over here. Profit divided by sales. The measure is created. It is present here in the orders table. Profit divided by sales. And this is the formula. That's it. It is ready. It got created. It is there in my data pane. And I could visualize it simply by creating a card. Done. I will even go ahead and format it to a percentage. So whether I wrote it explicitly by selecting the option to create a new measure and I wrote the formula from the scratch, or whether I used the quick measure feature, provided the numerator and denominator, and then I divided the two numbers to get the ratio. The value is one and the same, 12.56, 12.56, no change. It's the same thing. Only thing is here for profit ratio, I wrote the formula manually. Here I took the help of quick measure and it created the formula. Do you see the difference in the syntax? Let me put it together for comparison. This is the formula that I had written, and the formula that quick measure gave me is this. The formula that quick measure gave me is this. It is giving it a name as profit divided by sales, and it has explicitly used the divide function. I just use the division operator, which is perfectly fine. You can use it. But using the divide function is slightly superior. Why? Because in the divide function, you give the input, whatever is the numerator, then you give whatever is the denominator, and then you can also specify how to handle a divide by zero error if at all. If at all you come across a divide by zero error, which I did not do in my formula that I wrote explicitly. I just used the division operator. So let me change this. I also could have used a divide. Numerator is sum of profit. Denominator is the sum of sales. And then there is a third option that you can specify, alternate result. Safe divide function with the ability to handle divide by zero. Ability to handle divide by zero. When you divide a number by zero, what happens? You can't divide a number by zero. It's not possible, isn't it? If at all, for whatever reason, the denominator turns out to be zero, the total sales turns out to be zero, then the original formula that I wrote, this will throw an error. If at all the sales happens to be zero for whatever reason, this will throw an error. Whereas if I use the divide function, I can specify how I might want to handle it. Divide the profit by sales. If at all there's a division by zero scenario, the safe mode will be enabled and answer will become zero rather than throwing an error. So using a divide function in that way is better than simply using the division operator. Both are correct, but this is slightly better. And that is exactly what Power BI used. Though it didn't specify what to do upon zero, but it used the divide function over here. And whatever formula is created, when you use the quick measure feature, you can always go and tweak it. You can make some changes to it. You could change the name of the field. Profit ratio QM, I will call it. Something that I created to quick measure. You see, I can tweak the formula. So instead of having to write from the scratch, using the quick measure, you can build it. If you're happy with it, leave it there. If you want to make any changes, you can always go ahead and modify that formula. So I hope you got some understanding of what is a quick measure. Let's see another example. So I showed you an example under mathematical operations, division. Now, let's go here. Let us say I want to aggregate the data per category. I want to aggregate the data per category. I would like to get average per category. So I want to take the profit, look at the profit for each and every, what to put under category, any categorical member. Category here means any sort of calculated member. The category in which you want to calculate average. Your base value is profit. Base value is profit, and we want to take the average of the profit values. Aggregation that you see here will not make any difference. Why will it not make any difference? I will tell you. So I'm going to take segment here and I'll click on add. Now look at the formula that it will build. Okay, it is going to calculate the average. It is going to calculate the average of row level data. You see, it is not simple average. It is average X. The moment you see the letter X towards the end of an aggregation, like sum X, min X, max X, count X, average X, it means it is working with row level data and then getting the averages of all those rows. Every row has a profit number. It has a profit figure. So from each and every row, profit is taken and average of it is computed. So though we see sum of profit here, it really doesn't matter. The sum of profit here is this sum of profit. If you want, you can change the summarization. I can change it to average. I could go ahead, change it to whatever I want. It does not matter. It does not matter because this here is what matters. That you are trying to compute average of the data present in the profit column while we are going to be looking at each segment, we are going to filter the data on segment. Keep filters on the segment column. Exactly what will this produce? Let's see. I'll create a small table here to show you the list of segments and the result of my profit average per segment. So essentially, what did this formula do? Essentially, what did this quick measure formula do is it is calculating average profit per segment, per customer segment. For each segment, what is it? If I remove segment, it's giving me the overall average. We have the filter on segment, so I'm going to put segment here and it gives me average per segment. Let me add this, I think. Sorry, average per segment is this. Earlier we took sum of profit, right? Though it was going at row level data, it made a mistake. So I will delete this. Average per segment. Okay. Average of profit and segment is what I'm looking at. Let me go ahead and show it to you. Here. Here. Okay, so basically, without having to manually write the formula, I could simply use the fields and it will go ahead and give me the formula, which I can use in creating different types of graphs and visuals. Average per category. Now, let me remove this. I will show you another example, which is maybe on a new page. YTD. Okay, let us now look at some time intelligence functions that we can use under the quick measures feature that is available. So I'll just click on your quick measure. It opens the pane. Time intelligence functions. For example, if I have to get the YTD total, year to date total, quarter to date, month to date, or year over year, quarter over quarter, month over month, rolling average. So if you have to compute something like this, how can we do that? Suppose I want to get YTD total. Okay, suppose I want to get the YTD total. So base value and the date has to come. Let's say I want to get the YTD sales, that is my base value. That is my base value. And I want to get the YTD sales by date. Okay, I have something called as order date here. I will use it. However, this will not work. See, why will this not work is the formula is created. Time intelligence functions that you use under quick measures, they can only work, they can only be grouped or they can only be filtered by Power BI provided date hierarchy or a primary date column. So for these time intelligence functions to work correctly, we need to have a date hierarchy that is provided by Power BI or a primary date column. This is also fine. We have a primary date column, which is in a hierarchical format. Date hierarchy is there. It could work. However, when you are using time intelligence functions, it is always better to create a date dimension table. Always create a date dim table. Let me add this. YTD sales. And I'm going to create a table with my order date showing the sales. Date, I will keep it at month and day level. Okay, let's say for every month, every day, this is sales. And now the sales YTD that we created, I brought in here. Okay, the sales YTD that I created, I brought in here. It's working, which is good, but it may not always work. It is working in this case. Fine. It is giving me the YTD for every year. 2021, for all the 4 quarters. Let me convert this to a matrix. It will be easier that way. So what is YTD? It is the total value from the beginning of the year until the end of the year. It is like a running total that restarts every year. It is like a running total which restarts every year. So quarter 1, this is the value. By the time I come to quarter 2, the value is this. Means what? It is summation of quarter 1 and quarter 2. When we sum up these two, we get YTD until that point in time. Summation of all the 3 quarters here is YTD sales by the end of quarter 3, and summation of all of these 4 quarters is the YTD sales by the end of quarter 4. Then when a new year starts, 2022 starts, again, it is referring to that particular quarter, first quarter. Second quarter is summation of these two. Third is summation of all the 3 quarters. And this is the summation of all the 4 quarters, which is nothing but your yearly total. The total for that year. The total for that year. Similarly, over here and over here. Okay, it worked, which is perfectly fine. But what if it doesn't work? Sometimes it might not work. Because these time intelligence functions, they need a date field. They need a date table that they can reference. And the dates should preferably be non-repetitive, and they should not be any missing dates. In your primary date column, there should not be any missing dates. Here it is working, which is good, but it may not work sometimes. So what is the safest option in Power BI always is you create a date dimension table. Create a date dimension table. How do I create a date dimension table? I will just go to my table view. I'll create a new table using the calendar function. So I'll just call this date dim. Okay, and use the calendar function. Calendar function will generate contiguous dates. Okay, it returns the table with one column of all the dates between the start date and the end date. From the start date to the end date, it will generate a column with all the dates from the start date to the end date. What should be the start date and what should be the end date? So I will take start date as, let's say, the minimum date that is present in the order date column. So whatever is the first date for which we have data in our main table, up to whatever is the last date for which I have data in my order date column, which is my primary table. So once I do this, a date table is created. A date table is created with a date column in it, with contiguous dates, non-repetitive dates, and nothing is going to be missing if you notice. We have time also, which is not required, right? So I can get rid of time by simply selecting that column date and changing its data type to date from here. Changing the data type to date from here. Now, once you have this ready, you can create all other variants of a date within this date dimension table, and you can reference those variants. Like, for example, I want a column to store the year. Within this table, I want a new column where I will store the year, which is the year of the date field that is present in my date dim table. I want to store, let's say, the month or the quarter. Okay, so month of the date in the date dim table. This is one way of obtaining it. Another way of obtaining the month, or if I want to get the month name or something, I can say month name equal to, so date dim table's date field dot month number or month name. This will give me the name of the month. Okay, suppose I want to get the quarter. Quarter is equal to, again, I could do it like this. Quarter of the date field in the datem table. Okay. Now let's say I want to know the quarter as QTR1, QTR2. I want to mark it like that. So I could say quarter name from the datem dot, you see here, what? So anything is fine. However we want, we can do it. So we usually create a date dimension table, and all the variants of date like month, year, quarter, day, everything you can keep in separate columns. And before you use that in any formula, you need to create a relationship between the actual table and the datedim table. How do I create a relation? Is I'll take the date from datedim and drop it on order date over here. It has recognized the field. One to many is the cardinality between them and sig. Okay, so you need to understand what are relationships, what is cardinality, what is the purpose of a datedim table, how to use it when you're building your formula. All this you need to know. Now you see, this is not going to work anymore because I already have my datedim table created, right? I have my datedim table created with all these variants and date in it. This is no longer showing me a hierarchy symbol. And sales YTD, which was created using the quick measure feature, you see here it is throwing an error. So now what I'll do is I'll not reference this date. I will reference the date present in the datedim table and change or update my formula. Okay, update my formula based on the date that is over here. Let me bring sales YTD again just to refresh the visual. Or let's recreate it. After creating the datedim, let me just delete this from the model. And I'm going to recreate it using the quick measure. So I need the sales, YTD sales, date reference comes from this datedim table. Look at the way the formula will get built. Same formula using total YTD, we are getting it, but using the datedim table. Okay. And once I click on add, it comes here. I think it got added twice anyway. I'll delete the first occurrence. It came here, sales YTD. And now let me build my chart. With date, drill down to quarter level, show the actual sales, and also show the sales YTD created using quick measure. Okay, so whether you use quick measure or you write a formula explicitly, doesn't matter. Both will work. If you're using a quick measure, date reference, it should be a primary date column with the date present in a hierarchical format. Or generally in Power BI, we always create a date dimension table with the contiguous list of dates, non-repetitive and non-missing dates, and that is used as the date reference in every calculation. Okay, to be on safer side, it's always a good practice to create a date table and use that to reference the dates. YTD, I hope is clear. It's nothing but like running total that is calculated for each year. Let me show you another quick measure. This time, I want to get the year-over-year change. Year-over-year change. Okay, YOY. So the base value is sales, date, and number of periods, year-over-year. So compare the current year with the previous year and fix or get the information. Why did these get auto-filled? Because we already did year-to-date total over here, isn't it? YTD total we already did. Then now we're just changing it to year-over-year change. That's why these are auto-populated. If you want, you can always delete them and bring other values over here, but I will keep it like this. Add, and it's going to create a formula now. Sales YOY percentage. Sales YOY percentage. Okay, what is it doing? It is calculating the data for the previous year and dividing the sales of the current year minus previous year with the previous year. Looks complex, right? Looks complex, but it's a simple formula. I'll break it down and show you. Anyway, this got created automatically. We don't even have to worry about it now. All I can do is simply select it to include it into my table. Select it and include it into the graph, and you can see the year-over-year growth percent. How is this computed? So year-over-year growth in any system, any business you take, it is the current year. If this is my current year, then the current year minus the prior year, minus the prior year. Okay, current year minus the prior year. So this is current year data minus the previous year data divided by the previous year. Okay. YOY growth percent is the current year minus the last year or the prior year divided by the last year or the prior year. Okay, this is how YOY is computed. Now, if you look at that formula which Power BI automatically generated for us, that is what is happening. So it is calculating, let's try to understand this. It is calculating the summation of sales. It is calculating the summation of sales for which frame, for which time frame? Whatever is the date here minus 1 year. So if you're taking 2022 minus 1 year, 2021 data is getting computed. If I'm comparing 23 with the previous year, then minus 1, 22 data will be here. If my current year is 2024, then the previous year, minus 1, adding -1 to the year part. So 2024 plus -1 makes it 2023. That is the previous year. Data is stored in this variable. Then we are dividing the current sales with the previous year sales that is computed using this formula. With the prior year sales, which is computed using this formula. And after the difference is obtained, this is the numerator of the divide function, comma, divide it with the previous year data. That is the denominator of your divide function. And this value is getting returned. It is coming into the graph here. Okay, so suppose I will do it manually. I want to create a measure that will calculate and store the last year sales. The sales for prior year or last year. Okay, let's say I want to get the sales for prior year or last year. How can I calculate the last year sales? So I would like to calculate the summation of sales. I want to calculate the summation of sales. But for what? The filter condition for last year. How can I say get me for the previous year or the last year? So I'm using the date add function to the date field. Okay, to the date field that is present in the date dim table. Number of intervals is -1 because I want to go 1 year prior, comma, the interval itself is year, 1 year prior. So year. What will this formula do? It will give me the last year sales. It will give me the last year sales. Look at this. Over here, I don't have any last year because 2021, we don't have anything prior to that. We don't have the prior year. Therefore, last year is not there. But for 2022, in 2022, this is the sales. Then last year, these values have come here. In 2023, this is the sales. Last year, you see, these 4 values have come here. So that is what the formula did, right? It obtained the last year sales. After obtaining the last year sales, what did it do? Division. What did it do to get the year YOY sales? So the last year sales that I obtained, first current year, right? Summation of sales current year minus the sales of the last year. Okay, and this whole thing is divided by the sales of last year. That's all. That is what YOY gave me. If I go and include YOY sales in here, it's coming like this. I will just go and make it a percentage, and you will see that's exactly what the quick measure formula gave us. And here you see infinity. Why? Because there is no last year sales. So when it divides the current year with the last year, which is not there, it's giving infinity. That is why it is always good to use the divide function. Use the divide function, but this becomes the numerator, comma, this becomes the denominator, comma, 0. This is the numerator, which we are dividing by the denominator, getting 0. And now the infinity will not come. Instead, we are replacing it with zeros. That is the purpose of the divide function. Okay. So I did it in 2 steps. First, I showed you what is last year sales. Then I am obtaining the year-over-year sales. But using quick measure, we didn't have to go through all this trouble. Directly saying, get me the year-over-year change of sales for one number of periods is like 1 year to the previous year, right? 1 year to the previous year. So 1, if you specify 2, it will skip 1 year and go back. And we have the answer. That way. So this is how quick functions quick measures will help you. You don't have to sit and write the formula from the scratch. You can simply use quick measure. It will create the formula. If you're happy with the formula, you use it as is. If at all there are any changes that you feel should be made to the formula based on your requirement, you can always go and tweak the formula. Generally, it would not be required. But one thing you should always remember is if you're using time intelligence functions from here, make sure that you have a datedim table to refer to. Otherwise, it may not always work properly. Okay, I hope it was clear. If you have any questions, you can ask me. You can put it in the chat box. I will try to respond. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. All right. Thank you all for joining in today, for tuning into the session. I hope it was a little meaningful and interesting. If you found it interesting, if you found or if you think the session had benefited you in any way, has given any sort of a value add, I request you all to kindly like the video and share it with your friends. And please do subscribe to our channel if you have not yet done that. We conduct such webinars and meetings from time to time, which would help you, hopefully. Right. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.